All right, so are you ready to dive into a new book with us today?
Always. I'm excited to see what we've got.
Okay, well, this one is called The Last Bookstore on Earth by Lily Braun-Arnold.
Ooh, post-apocalyptic, I'm guessing.
You got it. But here's the thing. It's not your typical, like, end-of-the-world action-packed kind of story.
Really? What's different about it?
I think the best way to describe it is it focuses on the characters more than the apocalypse itself. Like, the world has definitely gone through some crazy upheaval, but the story really zooms in on the everyday challenges of, just trying to survive.
Oh, interesting. So it's less about zombies and explosions and more about the human element.
Exactly. It's like, what would you actually do if the world as we knew it suddenly vanished, right?
Yeah, those little everyday things we take for granted.
Totally. Okay, so we meet our main character, Liz. She lives in this, how should I put it, rundown bookstore.
Rundown.
Yeah, it's seen better days. She inherited it from someone, and it's in, of all places, suburban New Jersey.
Suburban New Jersey. Not exactly the first place that comes to mind for a post-apocalyptic story.
I know, right? It kind of works. Anyway, it's been about a year since whatever happened, and Liz is pretty much on her own, relying on whatever supplies were left behind.
So the bookstore itself, is it like a safe haven for her?
In a way, yes. It's kind of falling apart around her, almost a metaphor for the state of the world, but it's also the only home she's ever known.
That makes sense. I can see how it would be both comforting and kind of unsettling at the same time, like familiar but also decaying.
Exactly. And the way the author describes it, it's so vivid, you can practically smell the musty books and feel the dust. Okay, so we've got Liz in her bookstore trying to make sense of this new world, and then enter Maeve.
Maeve, who's that?
Maeve is like the opposite of Liz in so many ways. She's tough, resourceful, knows how to fix things, the kind of person you definitely want on your team if the world ended.
Sounds like she's going to shake things up for Liz.
Oh yeah, definitely. Their relationship is like, it starts off with distrust, then they kind of form this uneasy alliance, and it's pretty clear that Maeve is going to push Liz to face some hard truths about herself and the world.
That sounds really interesting. I like the idea of these two very different characters coming together and having to rely on each other.
It is. And the way the author builds this whole post-apocalyptic world, it's not like over the top. It's the subtle things that really draw you in.
Oh, like what?
Well, like, there's this scene where Liz is scavenging for supplies and she comes across this ransacked Target. Everything of value is gone except for the board games.
Board games. That's an odd detail. What do you think it means?
I don't know. But it really makes you think about, like, what becomes essential when the world changes, right?
Huh. Makes you wonder what people would value, what they would hold on to.
Right. And there's this other thing, these mysterious storms that keep happening. They kind of reshape the landscape, and they add this whole layer of danger to everything.
So it's not like the world just ended and now everything's static. It's still changing, still unpredictable.
Exactly. And you get these hints about other groups of survivors out there, each with their own ways of coping, their own ideas about how to rebuild. Or maybe not rebuild at all.
Ooh, okay. So there's definitely potential for conflict, different ideologies clashing.
For sure. I mean, we don't know much about these other groups yet, but just the fact that they're out there adds to the suspense.
Oh,
It makes you wonder who Liz and Maeve might encounter. Whether those encounters will be friendly or, well, not so friendly.
and that's where we leave off for today.
Right, we do. But just wait until you hear what's next. Trust me, it gets even more intriguing.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Good, that's the goal. We'll get into all of that in the next part of our deep dive into The Last Bookstore on Earth.
So last time, we were talking about all that mystery surrounding Liz's past, right?
Yeah, like it's not just some typical family drama or anything. It's like her upbringing was like its own kind of apocalypse, almost like it prepared her for the real thing in this, messed up way.
You're totally right. It's almost like the author is setting up this parallel, right, between Liz's past and the world she's living in now.
Yeah, like through these flashbacks, we start to see Liz's family before everything went down.
Yeah.
And her dad, man, he was obsessed with this idea of like imminent disaster, the end of the world,
Oh, wow. So he was like a doomsday prepper.
basically.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Liz describes how he was like building an ark in their backyard.
An arc. Seriously.
Seriously. And it wasn't just that. He was like super eccentric in other ways too. Liz talks about how he used to like reenact musicals in the middle of the night. It's almost funny the way she describes it.
I can imagine. But I bet there was also this underlying tension, this anxiety that was always present in their
Oh,
family.
absolutely. And then there's Liz's sister, Thea. Talk about a complete opposite.
Really? How so?
Well, Thea seems super grounded, practical. Like she's the voice of reason in this, slightly unhinged family.
So she's the one who tries to keep things real while their dad's off building arcs and singing show tunes.
Exactly. Thea's the one who calls out their dad's whole Alaska plan as doomsday prepper level shit. I think that's an exact quote.
Haha, love it. Straight to the point.
Yeah. And you can't help but wonder, like, would Thea have been better equipped to handle the actual apocalypse? Yeah. She seems so much more adaptable.
That's an interesting question because Liz, she seems more drawn to what's familiar, even if it's, kind of dysfunctional.
Exactly. And that's such a key point, I think. Liz's whole struggle with change, even when the world's literally falling apart around her, it all goes back to her family, her upbringing.
So it's like she's stuffing these patterns from her past.
Yeah. Like she was always caught between her dad's anxieties and her mom trying to pretend everything was normal. So she never really learned how to make her own choices. There's this scene where she's talking about applying to colleges and she's got all these plans, these spreadsheets, but then she just freezes up. She can't commit to anything.
Wow. That's like a metaphor for her whole life, isn't it?
Totally. And it's almost like for Liz, making the wrong choice was more terrifying than making no choice at all.
And that fear of making the wrong choice, it carries over into the post-apocalyptic world too, doesn't it?
It does. So for her, the bookstore represents like this world of possibilities, a time when choices still mattered.
Makes sense. It's her safe space, her connection to the past.
Right. But then we have Eva, the bookstore's previous tenant. She's this total enigma, but she seems to have figured out how to not just survive, but actually thrive in this new world.
And she's completely different from Liz.
Oh, yeah. Eva's all about practicality, resourcefulness. Like she had faced her own share of hardship even before the world went to hell.
So she was already kind of prepared, in a way.
Maybe. But more importantly, she understood the importance of community, even in isolation. Remember the stockpile she left for Liz? It wasn't just about supplies. It was about, passing on a legacy,
Right.
making sure the bookstore could become a haven for someone else.
Right. It was like she was saying, this place matters. It's worth saving.
Exactly. And it makes you think, what would you leave behind for someone to find, Would it be just stuff or something more, like a piece of yourself?
Wow, that's a deep question. And, thinking about it, Liz always refusing gifts. It's like this leftover habit from her family. But Eva, it seems like she challenged that.
Huh. Yeah, you're right. I never thought about it that way.
It's subtle, but it says a lot about how Eva influenced Liz, even without actually being there.
Like she planted this seed of change in Liz.
And that seed, it starts to grow when Maeve shows up.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Maeve, with her, tough love approach, she pushes Liz to confront her fears and her limitations. It's like she's carrying on Eva's legacy in a way.
Showing Liz that survival's not about hiding, it's about engaging with the world, taking risks.
Like when Liz is thinking about the generator and how it's useless without propane, but then she has this, vision of a light bulb working, maybe even air conditioning.
Yeah, that's a turning point for her.
Totally. It's like for the first time, she's letting herself imagine a future beyond just surviving.
And that shift in thinking, that hope, it's directly tied to both Eva and Maeve.
It's amazing how the author weaves all these connections together. So Eva might be a ghost, but her presence is definitely felt throughout the whole story.
And those marks she left, they run deep. But remember, we still have that mystery of the figure outside the bookstore.
Yeah.
And those storms, they're still out there waiting to reshape everything. Things are just getting good.
Oh, I know. The tension's killing me. Those storms, they're not just bad weather, are they? They're like symbols of all the chaos and uncertainty hanging over this world.
They're a constant reminder that even when you find a safe haven, you're never really in control.
Makes you think about how we deal with anxiety in our own lives, doesn't it? The things we just can't predict or control.
Definitely.
Okay, I need to know what happens next. Let's dig into these storms and see if we can uncover some clues about that mysterious figure lurking around. This is where it gets really juicy, right? So we've got Eva's, presence everywhere, and those storms, and that mysterious figure outside. How does it all come together?
Remember how we talked about the bookstore being a character, too? It's not just a place.
Yeah, it's decaying, but there's that feeling of hope in it.
Right.
Like the world Liz and Maeve are trying to live in.
It's a reflection of their world. And in the end, the bookstore becomes even more important, like a center point, not just for Liz and Maeve, but others too.
Wait, others? So it becomes about, more than just them surviving.
It's about creating something new. But, the author asks, can you rebuild when the world's still so fragile?
Like those storms could just wipe it all out again.
And they highlight those choices we make. Do we rebuild what's lost? Or embrace the unknown?
It's like in our lives too, right? Do we play it safe or risk it all?
And when other people are involved, things get more complex. Liz wants to protect the bookstore, but Maeve's more like, we need to look outward.
How do they work that out?
I can't spoil it, but the author blends their conflicts together. It's heartbreaking and courageous, and in the end, it's about transformation.
No spoilers.
Mm.
But those themes, connection and belonging, are they there at the end?
Oh, absolutely. The ending really shows that even in a broken world, we can find ways to connect, to create meaning, to build something new, together.
I love that. So hopeful. It makes you want to believe they can make it.
That's what makes this book so powerful. It doesn't ignore the harshness, but it offers hope. The human spirit endures.
Okay, I'm convinced this is going on my reading list. So
Aw.
for our listeners, what's the one thing you want them to take away?
It's not just about surviving the apocalypse, it's about surviving ourselves, facing our fears, embracing change, and finding connection in the most unexpected places.
Beautifully put. It's like those storms in our own lives, the things that test us and make us see what really matters.
If you want a book that stays with you, that makes you think and feel, question everything, The Last Bookstore on Earth is it.
Okay, well, that wraps up our deep dive into this amazing story. We explored the characters, the world, the themes, and hopefully you're ready to pick up a copy now.
This is just the start of your journey. Let us know your thoughts and what questions you have.
Join the conversation on social media. And until next time, happy reading.